The National Women's Suffrage Association and the American Women's Suffrage Association, both founded in 1869, were the main suffrage organizations in the U.S. during the 19th century. The National American Women's Suffrage Association was an American women's rights organization formed in May 1890 as a unification of the National Women's Suffrage Association and the American Women's Suffrage Association. The first, the National American Women's Suffrage Association, under the leadership of Carrie Chapman Catt, was a moderate organization. The NAWSA undertook campaigns to enfranchise women in individual states, and simultaneously lobbied President Wilson and Congress to pass a women's suffrage constitutional amendment. NAWA's membership numbered in the millions by the 1920s. The second group, the National Woman's Party, under the leadership of Alice Paul, was a more militant organization. The NWP undertook radical actions, including picketing the White House, in order to convince Wilson and Congress to pass a women's suffrage amendment. They pursued the right to vote in different ways, but by 1890 it became necessary to combine efforts to keep the cause alive. The NAWSA became the most mainstream and national visible pro-suffrage group. Its strategy was to push for suffrage at the state level, believing that state-by-state support would eventually force the federal government to pass the amendment. The NAWSA hosted and participated in large and theatrical suffrage parades and held major annual conventions that helped to keep its members energized. It also sponsored several newspapers and a suffrage press that published pamphlets, broadsides, and books. These publications showed the strategy employed by the NAWSA in its attempts to win over various constituencies. In 1913, the women of NAWSA organized a mass parade down Pennsylvania Avenue, which coincided with Woodrow Wilson's inauguration. The parade was led by Inez Milholland, a suffragist and labor attorney, dressed as a Grecian goddess riding a white horse. It was a grand scene that stole the show from Wilson. Though the parade garnered front-page media attention, put the movement on the national scene, Paul left the organization to form the National Women's Party. While NAWSA was focused on achieving suffrage on a state level, NWP believed change could only come with a constitutional amendment. Paul and her supporters engaged in a series of pickets at the White House, with signs calling the President Kaiser Wilson, among other things. The picketeers, known as silent sentinels, were frequently arrested and charged with obstructing traffic. Sentences varied from 60 days, with Paul herself serving 7 months in the Occoquan workhouse. In the United States, women had achieved the vote in several western states, but had not been able to obtain full suffrage in populous eastern states. In some states, women had managed to obtain the right to vote in school board elections and on local economic issues. In 1912, suffragists undertook campaigns in Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, Kansas, Arizona, and Oregon. Of these, the Kansas, Arizona, and Oregon campaigns were successful. In 1914, campaigns in Montana and Nevada were successful, but campaigns in North Dakota, South Dakota, Ohio, Missouri, and Nebraska all failed. In 1915, 4 campaigns in New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, and Pennsylvania were all unsuccessful. However, the unsuccessful campaigns laid the groundwork for future victories. The New York campaign was particularly important. Carrie Chapman Catt had returned to suffrage work to organize a campaign, and working in tandem with Harriet Stanton Black's Women Political Union, suffragists had significantly increased their support in the state. In 1920, due to the combined efforts of the NAWSA and WP, the 19th Amendment enfranchising women was ratified. This victory is considered the most significant achievement of women in progressive era. It was the single largest extension of democratic voting in our nation's history. Once suffrage was achieved, the NWP focused on passing an Equal Rights Amendment. The party remained a leading advocate of women's political, social, and economic equality throughout the 20th century.